Hey, this is Dr. Kimberly Cassidy from Shawnee State University, and today I wanted to talk to you about the developmental stages of writing. And one of the ways that I did that when I was in the classroom, I did a lot of studying on journaling in the classroom, specifically with pre-K students. But you could do this with any of your younger age groups. You could do pre-K, you could do kindergarten, even up into first grade. Because we all know that we have students who come to us at different developmental stages. So if we believe that, then we certainly believe that they would come to us at different developmental stages of writing. So there are 8 developmental stages of writing, and the first one that I'm sure you're familiar with is scribbling. And scribbling, it just looks like, for anyone else looking at it, it just looks like random marks on a child's paper, and you've seen it. It's just very random. I mean, it may not look like anything, but when you ask them what that is, they may tell you that it says, "I saw a black cat today." And as the teacher, you would go behind them and you would go and you would write, "I saw a black cat today." And we would do that in the journals in the first page, and they would probably have crayons. They would draw whatever that they would interpret to be a black cat. Usually it never looked like a black cat, but it was their first experience in a situation where we were asking them to draw their representation of what it was. And they were learning how to hold the pen or the pencil or the crayon the correct way. So those were the things we were looking at. Now, stage 2, that's letter-like forms, letter-like symbols, and they're randomly placed, and typically you'll see them putting numbers in that as well. So you'll have some, at this point, they've usually learned a few of the letters, so you might see a C, and it won't be that good, maybe an A, and there's a 3 and it's backwards, maybe a 2, and this for them is a sentence, and it says, "My birthday is today." And of course you go right behind them and you ask them to tell you about their journal for the day, and they tell you and you write it below them, right? "My birthday is today." And those are the words you want to use. You want to say, "Tell me about your picture today," or "Tell me what you wrote today," so that it's kind of open-ended and it gets them to talk about it more. The next phase, the third phase, is strings of letters. And in the strings of letters, children write some legible letters that tell us that they know more about writing. And then they're developing an awareness of the sound to symbol relationship, although they're not matching those sounds just yet. They're still in that development stage. Remember, there's 8 phases, so we're just in phase 3. And when you do journaling, you're going to be able to remember, you're going to be able to go from the first day that you start journaling all the way to the end and see all of these stages in most children. Not all. Remember that you have some that will not master writing in your class, but this is an excellent way to see those stages as they progress. So here in stage 3, you're doing the strings of letters, and they're usually capital letters because they're going to master the capital letters before they master the small letters, and they don't really do spacing yet either. So you might even have some of your students who really pick up on it may even be able to do some short, words like cat at this point. So you might have some, maybe cat, pretty rare, but you might. Some of your brighter students, ones that, have maybe teachers as parents that work with them all the time, or you might have the ones that their C's are going to be not so great. Like I did a really good C right there, and then of course the A and the T, but they're not going to be really well formed. They're going to be, a D is going to look kind of like a P, because it's not going to end correctly. And of course, you're not going to have any spaces. So you're just going to have some big letters strung out. And of course, you're going to go back and you're going to ask them, what would you journal about today? Most of the time, there's going to be a picture. And sometimes they'll draw, let's say, a snowman. And it probably won't even be that great, but it might be. And they may say, we built a snowman this weekend. And you can go below here and say, we built a snowman this weekend. And I always put the dates. So if this were like August 3rd, and this were, August 28th, you always put the dates so that you can have a clear, you can see how fast they were developing, how long it took them to develop, how those things were. You want to kind of get an idea of that time frame. You can even take those dates and make, graphs out of them. And that's especially helpful if you end up doing any kind of special education referral. You would have this for that. It's a great amount of data that you're going to be sharing. This can be used in that regard. The fourth stage is beginning sounds emerging. So you're working with them in class. You're talking about letters and words. You're starting to have them sound out those words so their messages make sense and they match, and the messages match the pictures just a little bit better. So they're beginning to really improve that. It's kind of like reading a book where the author, the picture starts to really reflect what's going on in the story. So do their scribbles. They really start to reflect. You can look at their pictures and kind of see what the story is that they're trying to tell you. So this is where you might get, like a house. Like you ask them to draw a picture of their house and their mom and their dad or whoever their, family, whatever their family looks like. They're typically not in proportion because obviously their house is not going to be at the same height as their mom and dad or whoever their guardian is. But you can tell a much bigger difference in their ability to draw and in their spatial awareness. And then in their letter and their words, in their wording, in your drawing their letters, you're going to see that they start doing upper and lowercase. So they might try to do like mom and dad. You might see, mom and, dad. And you're probably not going to get too much spacing still, but you're going to get a much better, it's much more readable. You know where they're coming from. You can see a huge improvement in what they've been doing. You can see that they're picking up on uppercase, lowercase. Again, it's not going to be perfect. We're just halfway through those phases, but definitely huge improvement in their abilities here. Then you're going to see a huge jump in the fifth phase. It's consonants that represent words. They begin to leave spaces between the words. They mix upper and lowercase letters in their writing, and they usually can write a full sentence with some help. So when they tell you these stories, if they drew something similar to this in the fifth stage, they might begin to tell you a story about, mom and dad, we were outside, we had a bonfire, we were roasting marshmallows, we made s'mores. And you might write multiple sentences or have them write multiple sentences. They're not going to be perfect. You're going to have some letters that aren't perfect. You may even have some numbers still mixed in with that because they're not going to master the entire alphabet that quickly. But it's going to be pretty close. They're going to get really good at that. Especially if you do journaling every single day, it becomes a habit for them, and they work on that skill every single day, and you see improvement much quicker. I've had teachers that do it once a week or twice a week, and it's still good to do it in any event. If you do it once, that's great. If you do it twice a week, that's great. But if you do it every single day as part of their just daily work, the improvements that you see in their writing and the way they hold their pencil, their pencil grip is much better. Gross motor skills, fine motor skills. Anytime you work on that, the more you do it, the better you get. And that's the exact same thing that happens when you do journaling. You're working on all of that, and you're working on imagination skills. There's so much that goes into it. When you go into the sixth phase, which is initial, middle, and final sounds, children in this phase may spell correctly some sight words, siblings' names, environmental print. Other words are spelled the way they sound. They're able to sound out words the way they sound, and their writing is readable. You may have more of this work towards the end of, if you're talking about preschool students, the end of the school year, and it's going to be your students who are your high achievers. You're not going to get a majority of your preschool students past the fifth phase unless you really focus on this the entire school year. It's just pretty typical that the fifth phase is really pushing it for you to get that in preschool. Now kindergarten, you can have some really good writers in kindergarten if you do journaling all through preschool. If you start journaling in kindergarten, you're going to start probably at the third or fourth stage of developmental writing. For many children, if they've had any kind of preschool experience, and you'll meet that standard spelling, which is the eighth phase, much quicker, and you'll have very strong writers in your kindergarten classroom. So six, of course, initial, middle, and final sounds. They spell correctly. They got the sight words, siblings' names, familiar words that are relevant to their life. That's what they're going to really be good at. The seventh phase is traditional phases. It's writing. The writing's readable. The approaches to conventional spelling, they have figured out how to sound out words. They have moved up in reading, the reading level books, and they're probably some of your highest level readers. A lot of that is because of the journaling, how they've learned to sound out the letters and sound out the words. The writing's interspersed with words that are in standard form and have standard letter patterns. And we would mostly relate that to words that we use on a regular basis, very high use words. And then, of course, the last phase is standard spelling. So children in that phase 8, they can spell most words correctly. They're developing an understanding of root words, compound words, and contractions. And this helps. This understanding helps them spell similar words. So once they reach the 8th phase, they're able to expand that knowledge. They're considered masters of that particular skill. You actually would have, if you have students who at the end of your school year, or even by the middle of the school year, you've got them in the 4th phase, you can take that journal and show that in parent-teacher conferences, special education meetings, IEP meetings, and you can show that journal to them, and you can show them exactly what phase they're in, what phase they should be in based on their developmental level. It can be a tremendous tool, as I've said earlier, to show in an IEP meeting why you think perhaps a student would need some fine motor skill work, or if they maybe have a learning delay. This is great data for that. So we used it in many different ways. It's just a tremendous tool. So that's one thing that you can do. And again, you can do this in many, many different age groups. Even in some of your older students that are struggling with writing, journaling is a great way to do that. You would just do it in a more advanced form. They can journal almost like a diary, what they've done, or even read a book and do journaling with a book. So there's many different ways to do that. So I hope this is something that you'll look into. It's certainly something that I've always had an interest in. It's something that we used every single day in preschool, and it made a huge difference for our students. So hope you enjoyed that, and if you have any questions, be sure and get in touch with us here at Shawnee State University. My email is kcassidy@shawnee.edu. Thanks so much.